listening to the Millennial's Choice Show, Canada's most trusted podcast on all things real estate, finance, and entrepreneurship. Here's your host, Matthew Ablakan.
What's going on, everybody? Matthew Ablakan here from the Millennial's Choice group of companies. Hope you guys are all doing well. Today, I have a special guest in the house. He just winked at me, got me a little excited. Nick Stillo from One Urban Developments. What's going on, brother?
Lots.
Yeah?
I'm a busy guy.
I know you are, and I appreciate you coming on here to speak to our audience members. And before we get right into it, you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Make sure you download, follow us, share it with your friends and family. And if you're watching it on YouTube, smash that like button. It really helps with our algorithm. Brother, how's it going?
Good, man.
Good.
It's good to see you.
You like that pitch, eh?
I do. Smash that subscribe button.
Smash it. Smash it. You're working on a lot of stuff. I could see that on your social media page, oneurban.ca, oneurbandevelopments.ca.
No, oneurban.ca.
Oneurban.ca on Instagram. And you're coming up on completing one of your condo buildings that, you know, I'm proud to say that I purchased in. A lot of my clients did, but at 430 ESSA condos. How's that been?
It's been a struggle. Developing and building through COVID is not fun at all. Developing building in general is not fun at all. And then throw on a macro event like a pandemic, and it just makes things that much harder. But we're getting there. We're going to finish it.
So I'm going to ask you in a sarcastic tone. Did the pandemic affect you?
Yeah, certainly does. It affects everything. Trades, supply chain, raw material, cost. Getting people on site is very difficult.
You are one of the more fortunate ones who you had already started building. So thankfully, I don't think the government, I don't think they delayed you in terms of policy.
It's actually the other way around. We were going to start in March of 2020 when the first lockdown occurred. And that actually put us behind until July. We were 2 weeks away from mobilizing. And if you recall, the first shutdown required developers or builders to have above grade permits. So if you only had a below grade permit on a condo or a mixed use building, you couldn't build if you didn't have an above grade permit. And I didn't have it. I was a couple of weeks away from getting it.
Wow.
So we got slowed down. We actually didn't start digging holes until July of 2020.
Compared to March.
Correct.
What does that do for you as a developer?
Lots. You got to carry the site. You're carrying extra interest. You're carrying your consultants. Delays are no good for anybody.
When you say that, I just hear dollar signs.
Of course.
Interest on your loan, you mean?
Yep.
Consultants, they got to get paid.
100%.
And whoever else is part of that needs to get paid, right?
Mm-hmm.
How long was it from when you bought the land, doing your due diligence, and then going through the development process? How long has it been up until this point?
So we bought the land in the summer. Scratch that. We bought the land in the spring of 2016.
So you're past 5 years already.
Yes.
And the building is going to be ready in spring of 2022?
Yeah, we'll start handing keys in early spring 2022. And then by the time we're cleared with our deficiencies and cleared through anything that's required for our occupancies with the city and registration, we'll probably be out by the summertime. So we're over 6 years that we would have been into that property.
Wow.
Yeah.
And millions of dollars.
There's a lot of money in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to figure, right? We buy land, in this particular case, 6 years before you're about to close and see a penny back. So your land cost, your consultant cost, anything that happens prior to you actually getting construction financing is all being fronted by the developer.
So for those people who claim that developers are making so much money and they're the bad guys, like, how do you respond to that?
What makes us bad? Because we're out to make a profit like anybody else. I mean, you go to Longo's, right? You go and buy a bottle of Heinz ketchup for $5. That bottle cost Longo's $2.50, $3. So they made 100% profit on their purchase. Nobody squawks. You grab that ketchup, you buy it, you walk away, you're happy. What makes a condo any different? What makes a developer any different from Heinz? Are we not entitled to a profit? I think what makes people squawk is the fact that condos or housing in general is expensive. So when you're paying a lot of money for it, there's a lot of entitlement that comes with that. But it's no different than buying a $5 bottle of ketchup. It's the same thing. Heinz wants to make a profit. Developers want to make a profit. In fact, for developers, we don't see that profit until 6 years later in this particular case. For example, our Oakville site, we bought it in the fall of 2016. It's now under construction. By the time I'm finished, it'll be the spring of 2024. 8 years I'm in that project. Are we not entitled to a profit after 8 years?
Is that 8 years because of, some people would argue, because you chose to make it 8 years? Or
No, that's how long it takes to get a lot of things done in development. I mean, development is a boring business. And I say that because it goes at a snail's pace. It doesn't happen fast. You buy land, you do your due diligence before you close. You do your environmental site assessments, or known as ESAs, to make sure that there's no contamination, or at some time there was no gas station or dry cleaner on the site that would have contaminated that soil. And you take that into consideration as you're buying the land. And then you got to put it through the development approval process. And in many cases, that could be a zoning bylaw amendment, an official plan amendment, and then you have to do site plan. You could be 5-6 years just getting a site plan approved before you ever stick a shovel in the ground. For example, in Oakville, we just got site plan approved 5 years in. It takes time. And depending on the site, like some sites are a little bit more, the cities are a little bit more harsher on developers on certain sites that have certain things on them. Our Oakville site is a prime example. We had a heritage house on that.
What does that mean?
That means a house that had some historical significance, and the Heritage Society of Ontario recognized it as a home that should be preserved. So through years of working with the municipality, we were finally able to come up to an agreement to incorporate that house into the new building. So instead of demolishing it, we're able to dismantle it and catalog it and store it away for a couple of years while the building is being built. And then afterwards, we'll come back and we'll reassemble it as a facade on this new apartment building. But it doesn't always happen like that. They might tell you, no, we don't want you to incorporate it. We want you to keep it in its entirety. And then you have to work around that. Well, how can I incorporate this into a development site and still make it viable? Right. I mean, you got to remember that not every site is going to be profitable. Not every site is viable. You have to at least show 15% profit, or a bank won't even finance you. And most of the times, that's usually what you're making. After 8 years. Yeah. A good development will make 15%, something that's financeable. I mean, if you can get anything more than that, then it's gold. But there's not a lot of sites out there that are home runs. You're getting 20, 25%. They don't exist.
So if something costs $100 million to build, the developer's profit should be around 10 to 15%-ish, right? Is that safe to assume?
Yep.
So with that being said, do you feel that a lot of purchasers go in to buying, let's say, a pre-construction condo? Do you feel that they go in blind, or their realtor's not doing a good enough job explaining the risks associated with buying pre-construction, or their lawyer's not doing a good enough job? Because people are just looking at it and saying, oh, these builders are making a ton of money. They're not taking in the fact that you don't have $100 million to build this thing. You're borrowing it. You're tying in maybe the property that your family lives in, maybe the property that your partners live in, or where their kids were raised, and you're tying up all this collateral and guaranteeing this loan, which is no different than any other loan that someone personally guarantees, but you're playing on a way bigger level. Do you think a lot of people are misinformed when they think that developers are just greedy and they're making all this money and they're pocketing it and they don't care about anybody else but themselves?
I think it's a little bit of that. And I think it's a little bit of, you don't know what you don't know, right? You drive down a busy road and you see a development sign, or you see a sign of a condominium coming soon. You think that, oh, look, there's a building going up on that corner. Well, I can assure you that developer has been working on that land for 5 years already. People don't know that.
Without making a penny.
That's right. Nobody knows that. They just see a sign. Again, I think that it is a little bit of maybe misinformation from a lawyer or from a broker, and maybe it's a little bit of you don't know what you don't know. I mean, the most people don't know the amount of work that goes into developing a community.
Right. So does it let's talk business. Does it piss you off or rub you the wrong way if you hear about a project that gets canceled for various reasons and it gets canceled? Then you see all the negative publicity that surrounds the builder. And there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of fake news out there. Let's just be real. Does it piss you off? Does it rub you the wrong way?
I don't think it pisses me off because I don't really care what other people think. I think that articles and media are heavily weighed towards the consumer side, and they don't take into consideration the risks that the developer had to take to get it to that point, whether the project is canceled or not. I mean, it's very easy for a project to get canceled. It's actually not difficult at all. You figure, for example, 430 ESSA, we started selling in the beginning of 2019. We didn't start building until July of 2020. Well, that's a year and a half that things could have gone extremely downhill. And in many cases with the pandemic, it did. But nobody takes that into consideration. Right. Nobody thinks about what did the developer have to do to actually get construction financing? What did the developer have to satisfy in the bank's eyes in order for them to write a check for $100 million that you're talking about? It's not easy. It's actually downright difficult. So does it rub me the wrong way? No. I actually sympathize with the developers when they have to cancel a project. I feel bad because they've put years into a project and a lot of money, and they're not able to see the fruits of all their hard work. It's like anything else, right? You started Millennial's Choice Group of Companies. Doesn't it hurt you if one of the divisions within your companies were to go belly up because it just didn't work out? Of
course, yeah.
I mean, that's life. Things happen. It's your baby, right? But and that's life. It happens. On the flip side, purchaser buys a pre-construction, and before they ever get a mortgage, their property increases $200,000 in value. Do they come up to the developer and pat him on the back and say, "Thank you, Mr. Developer, you just made me $200,000"? No. But if the project gets canceled, then everybody's pointing the finger to the developer. How's that fair?
So when recently we saw a builder in Barrie cancel a project, or at least a portion of the project, and a lot of the purchasers went on news, mainstream media, and even to the extent of deliberately going to the site, taking a photo of expression of sadness. And look, I sympathize with the purchasers as well.
100%.
We both do.
100%.
And I, for those of you listening and watching, I know Nick personally, so he's not a bad guy. Far from it. But I sympathize with them, but I also don't like the tactics that I see. Like,
which tactics are you talking about? The media side, the developer side? Okay. Because
you're painting this picture, and what you're not realizing in an attempt to get clicks and sell articles or just gain some momentum, you're tarnishing or trying to tarnish a reputation of people that have families, and they've built countless communities that have never canceled. They've always built them. They've had a perfect track record, but something happened globally that shut down the world, caused a bunch of inflation to happen, supply bottlenecks in the system till now. And the builder basically approached the clients, the purchasers, and said, look, if you want to keep the contract, you need to pay $100K more. But the property is appreciated by probably around $250,000 to $300,000, the article was saying.
They're still up.
So you're still up. So had those people had the right group of people around them, like let's say I was in their corner, or I don't want to toot my own horn, but I will because it's my show. I would have showed them a way to successfully close the deal. And if it's unaffordable for them, I totally get it. If that was the case, I probably wouldn't have not recommended them buying anyway. But if it's completely unaffordable for them. Close the deal and flip the property, keep your deposit, and also keep the profits as well, and come out ahead. In this particular circumstance, there's a lot of litigation and whatnot, so we don't want to get too personal about it, but the way the article paints the picture is that the developer just screwed over everybody.
So let me just jump in there. The developer, I feel, did not screw anybody. The developer had a contract, a purchase agreement with purchasers that stated that a condition of them going through with the development and construction was that they needed to satisfy a construction lender. So let's look at this in practicality. If you sold units for $500,000 and 2 years later when you're about to construct them, those units now cost $500,000 because of inflation, because of supply chain, because of raw material, like I mentioned before, everything going up. You are going to go reach out to your purchasers as a Hail Mary and say, hey, do you still want to be part of this deal? Because if you don't pony up the extra $100,000, then the downfall of that is that we're going to have to cancel the entire development. But that's in the contract. It's not like the purchaser didn't know. It's not like the developer did anything that was disingenuous. It was in the contract. The purchaser waived that condition after 10 days of rescission period when they bought that unit in pre-construction. So it's up to the purchaser and the purchaser's lawyer, like you alluded to before, to give them the right information when they're buying so that they know those risks. They took a risk. It didn't work in their favor. You can't go and blame the developer because the developer took an equal risk, if not a heck of a lot greater, and it didn't work out for him either. And you said earlier that this particular developer has built a ton of communities. Yeah, they have. So to point at one that they had to cancel because of a macro event like a pandemic is completely unfair on the media side.
And the other thing is, it's important to note that they sold these properties like a week or two just before COVID became mainstream news in the first week of March. Like nobody could have predicted that to happen. And then what happened with the lumber prices of steel, prices of everything that you were just telling me off air, the prices of, what did you mention? The resin?
PVC.
Or PVC, yeah.
Hey, see, even that's a funny thing, right? PVC is required for conduit so you can run wiring through a building. And 5% of the makeup of the PVC is made up of resin. Resin is the one that has gone up significantly. There's nothing available. That directly affects the price of that PVC. But this happens everywhere. Wood prices went up 180%.
So share that. So when you're dealing with these trades as a developer, like tell the audience.
Yeah,
they come back to you.
I mean, after construction starts, when it's a firm deal now, I mean firm in the sense that we're digging a hole and we're going to do this thing. There's price increases all the time. There's change orders all the time. Architect makes one change that wasn't picked up earlier. That change could cost $30,000 with your eyes closed. And it happens all the time. And there's change orders and special site instructions that come out almost on a weekly basis. I mean, you got to remember that even while the building is under construction, the paperwork, the construction documents are still being worked on. They're still evolving. The design never stops. As you're constructing the building, you start seeing things that weren't picked up earlier and you make a change. Well, that change always costs money. Well, who eats that? The developer eats it. So, I was sharing with you earlier how, an electrician that uses a lot of PVC can come back to you and say, well, I budgeted X for this and now it's going to cost Y and that's going to cost you $50,000. And if you don't want to give it to me, I'm going to walk away. What do you do?
So what do you do?
You give it to him.
You give it to him.
You give it to him.
So now it costs you 50 G's more.
That's right. Because if you don't give it to him, good luck finding another electrician that can take over midway through a project. And I'm just using that as an example. I'm not pointing towards my electrician or anything like that. I'm just saying this stuff happens every single day. For example, my construction site in Oakville right now, we found conditions going into the ground as soon as we dug a hole. I'm not talking anything that was bad, but we just didn't realize what was in there before we dug it. And we can only do our best with the information that we have and the number of boreholes that you dig to do your environmental site assessment or your geological engineering work. You don't know until you actually dig the ground. You dig the ground and you find conditions that you didn't realize were there. Guess what? That excavation just went up 50 grand. What are you going to do? Say no? You're starting to dig a hole. You're on a schedule now. Happens every day, right from the beginning to the very end.
And it's important to mention that when a project does get canceled, that you get your deposit money back.
Absolutely.
So it's not like you only lose opportunity cost. That's it. That you didn't have the money invested in something else. That's the only thing. But I mean, you still get your money back. It's not like the developer can keep your money.
No, they can't.
No. Most of the times they're not even using the money. It's held in trust. I know you can, but there's times they don't. I just find it funny that it's very one-sided. It's very one-sided. That it's not, they barely go into the mention of people missing their payments and going NSF on their deposits and the builder's not terminating the deal during that time. The builder's trying to make it work.
We've had a number of them.
The builder's trying to make it work. There is an NSF fee, and that's not even, I don't even think that's your fee. That's like your lawyer's fee.
Correct.
So it's not like you're making the money. It's just like a processing fee that law firms charge. I just find it really funny that it's one-sided. I don't know. They don't teach us this stuff in school.
No, they don't.
Is there something that you would support as a developer for further regulation to help avoid some of these problems where you have a builder that is malicious, that is doing it in an unfaithful way, in an untruthful way? Would you support some sort of regulation?
I would, but I'd also like to comment on that builder you were talking about doing it in a malicious way. I don't think that anybody plops millions of dollars down on land and on drawings that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and on permit fees and application fees to screw anybody. Nobody's doing that. Why would you? It's too much money.
Yeah.
Especially when you know you can't get away with it. Like you said, it's not like we can take those deposits and run with them. Those are being held in trust. If the development goes belly up, everybody gets their money back. So what are we doing it for?
Well, the argument that some people make is that, and I was actually speaking with a lawyer about this recently, and the lawyer said, do not put it past any builder or developer to cancel the project simply to resell it later for more money because the market went up. And I said, well, I'd like to think that most builders are going to care more about their reputation over anything else. That's what I thought. So that's what that person was mentioning to me. So that's kind of like the counter argument to that, to support some sort of legislation like checks and balances. Like if you have a financing condition in your offer, and I've seen some builders where their occupancy is like 4 years away and they have a financing condition even past the occupancy date. I don't know how that's the case, but it's in the paperwork. I've seen it. And maybe they anticipate like if a delay happens or whatever, just to cover that period. But I mean, 4 years for a financing condition, like especially when the building's under construction and almost ready, like don't you think that's a little bit like out to lunch? Like why do you need a 4-year financing condition?
I certainly see that out to lunch. I haven't seen it myself, but you're saying that you have. So I would say that is out to lunch. Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of like some sort of, maybe time requirement, time restraint, like, okay, you need if you cannot get financing by this period, by this date, and it cannot exceed 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, whatever the case is. I don't know. That might be an idea. And then also there should be, I think, some checks and balances. If you're going to say that I can't get financing, then you have to prove that you can't get financing. But how would you do that?
Yeah. What are you going to send
How are you gonna
copy
prove?
of the pro forma to every purchasers to show them that you weren't making money and the bank wouldn't finance you? That doesn't sound like it's a practical way.
No.
You can always prove it with a lawsuit. And, you alluded to some lawsuits happening with that other development that went bust in Barrie. But by that point, and I've seen it happen, I've seen disingenuous lawyers or let's not call them disingenuous, but just, opportunistic lawyers that'll see a development go belly up and they'll try to put together a class action lawsuit. I actually saw it not too long ago with a building not too far from here that went belly up, and a friend of mine purchased there, and he had a lawyer that was rallying purchasers up so they could all pony up $1,000 each and try to sue the developer. Well, guess what? You're going to lose your $1,000. That's what I told my friend. Because that was in the contract. He could cancel the project. You waived that condition. If anything, you're going to raise your hopes for absolutely nothing, and you're going to waste $1,000.
Yeah. How would this developer in Barrie, how can they make it right? What would you suggest?
I think they tried.
The 100K? Yeah. That's the offer?
I think so. I think they tried. What else could they do? If they can't get financing to build it, what else are they going to do? The only chance they have to keep the development alive is to go back to the purchasers and ask them for more money. And if the purchasers don't agree, then you cancel the project. I think they tried their best. I mean, at the end of the day, if the developer could make it work, I'm pretty sure they would have. Nobody wants to be sitting on land for too long. Nobody wants to be tying up money, paying interest payments on land, and paying consultants for a long period of time. You want to get in and you want to get out. And I say that loosely because me getting in and out, I'm talking about one that I've been into for 6 years now, and another one that I'll be into for over 8 until I'm done.
Yeah.
So there is no such thing as really getting in and getting out. But you know what I mean? You as a developer, you want to finish.
I completely understand. I'm looking at the article, and they're quoting the average sales price when the builder started selling the units at just over $500K, and now they've increased to about $876,000.
So $100K is a deal.
Now, $100K is a deal, but we don't want to misconstrue that as just because they can, that's why they're doing it. No, they're doing it because they seriously are not. They're in a hole, and they're in a hole for reasons outside of their own control. And rather, they could have came back and said, give us $300K, give us $200K, give us, if it's gone up that much, if they were really trying to do it to grab cash, why would they settle at $100K, right? They could go for more. So I truly do think that in this particular situation, the builder is fine. Like I don't disagree with their decision, but you start reading into some of this stuff, and it's easy for purchasers or potential purchasers when they're doing research and wanting to learn about pre-construction, it's easy for them to point to this and say, I'm not going to buy here. But you really need to do your own research, especially not to knock on any purchasers, but some of the purchasers the article was quoting, they lost their job. They weren't really on stable feet. And I think what attracted them about this particular project was the low deposit structure.
$25,000.
Right? And I think it ranged as they went up or whatnot. But $25,000, I mean, that's kind of like, when I look at it as a broker, a realtor, I'm like, there's some red flags there. Like nothing I'm selling. Like I was selling projects for $25,000. We have another episode with one of our purchasers who bought a townhouse in Brampton with a deposit of $25,000.
How long ago was that?
That was 2013, 14.
Yeah. I remember this particular development in Barrie and when it came out, and I remember it because we were still marketing units at 430 ESSA, and obviously I've got my finger on the pulse with the Barrie market, so I know what was being sold at the time. And I remember seeing that deposit structure, and there's only one other developer in Barrie that has a similar deposit structure. This particular developer in Barrie is the oldest developer in the city of Barrie. I want to say they're the 4th or 5th generation. They've been building in Barrie for over 100 years. So they probably have the pull with the banks to be able to offer a $25,000 deposit. But in the case of the development that went bankrupt or that was recently in the news, I remember reading a $25,000 deposit structure and thinking to myself, how is any bank going to fund that? And again, you don't know what kind of relationship they have with their banks, where their bank might have seen their track record. That developer is a big developer. They've been around. Bank probably said, yeah, we know we're going to complete this thing. So we'll allow for a smaller deposit in order for you to incentivize people to buy. Quite possible. But But I agree with you. I mean, I hadn't seen deposit structures like that in a very, very long time, let alone in 2020.
Yeah. So to me, it was like, okay, that was a red flag for me, saying, you know what, I haven't seen that. I don't know why they're doing that, but for me, it's a red flag. But either way, like you said, we don't know. But then you read this article and they share this information about those purchasers, like having lost their job in COVID. They were already on not so much of a solid foundation.
So now the reader automatically really feels bad for these purchasers.
You feel bad, but
because they've gone through the hardships of the pandemic, losing their jobs and, you know, maybe losing their home or where they're currently residing. Yeah, it's very, very sad. But is that every purchaser, or is that just the one that the article wanted to showcase because they're the worse off?
Yeah. My whole thing is, and we have buyers all the time. Like we specialize with just helping a lot more buyers than sellers, but I get buyers all the time, you know, creating more problems for themselves. This person's only qualified to purchase a studio for $400K, but they want a 1-bedroom condo that sells for $500K. It's like, but you don't qualify. Like you're not managing your own expectation the right way. And if something goes wrong, which in this case it did, and I'm talking particularly with that purchaser, whoever the article was talking about, like they lost their job and then they had missed payments. The developer helped them and understood and kept it alive and kept it going. And obviously there's a fee for that, but that's fine. Like there's an NSF fee. And then to turn around and just throw the developer under the bus is what I have a problem with. And I'm not saying that because I'm a realtor, like, you know me, I speak my mind, but it's the truth. Like it's the developer, like up until that point, the developer was everybody's hero. And now it's like they're being just thrown under the bus.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that developers have a stigma of making money hand over fist. And at a time in Toronto development and construction, developers were making money hand over fist. I mean, in the heydays of development back in the 80s, 90s, and even early 2000s, yes, developers were making a lot of money. But the stigma doesn't go away. The profit has significantly reduced, but the stigma of being a developer doesn't go away. So yeah, of course, when there's a failure from a developer, they're gonna throw the developer under the bus because of that stigma that, oh, well, they're making all kinds of money. They deserve to be thrown under the bus. But I mean, you talk about purchasers that have no business buying what they're buying and they're overextending themselves. And a lot of that is probably a byproduct of low interest rates. So they say, okay, I can get a low interest rate of, you know, sub 3%, then I can stretch myself. But what happens if by the time you close, it's not 3% anymore and now it's 4%? 1% on an interest rate makes a massive difference in your payment.
Especially if you're already payment to payment, like month to month, and you're just hoping that everything goes well. Like you have no business buying. So
I mean, let me flip it back to you. You help buyers.
Yep.
What is your advice to buyers when they walk into my sales office and they only qualify for a 1-bedroom studio, or a studio rather, and yet they're extending themselves up to a 2-bedroom when you know that they have no business buying it? Do you, as a conscientious broker, advise them that, hey, maybe this isn't the right purchase for you?
Oh, I don't represent them. I don't represent them. All my deals close. I've never had a deal not close. I just don't represent them.
If you know that they can't qualify for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't close. I need to know they qualify, which is why, because we have the mortgage division, we pre-qualify everybody.
But you're a rare bird. I mean,
very rare bird.
Do you think,
how rare, Nick? Tell them how rare.
Oh, baby, we couldn't talk about our private stuff here. But like, no, for real, like, is there? I don't know your colleagues and the people, the brokers in the city as well as you do. Like, do you know brokers that don't represent them that way and say, maybe, you know what, hey, buy it. I know you can buy. Why? Because there's a little extra commission there that's $100,000 more. So, you know, they're going to get an extra 4 or 5% over that. Like, does that happen in your industry where? I mean, there was a recent article just, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks ago.
Steering?
About steering. Yeah. It was actually a
Carson,
market.
We talked about
It wasn't an article. It was a marketplace segment that showed brokers disingenuously pushing their buyers to something that was giving them more commission. So, maybe there needs to be checks and balances in the broker community too. I mean, would you support regulations like that?
100%. Read this email. Just
can I read it out loud?
No, do not read it out loud.
All right.
Yeah. So that broker, just on that topic, doesn't want to show the clients that he has. You got it? You got the gist of it? Yeah, he doesn't want to show the clients that he has the condos, because he claims he doesn't have clients for that, but he adds in the remarks, this was just like November 17th, okay? Very recent. He said the cooperating commission does not allow me to participate. What does the cooperating commission have to do with it?
Why? I mean, there's no set in stone commission rate. I mean, TREB doesn't say that realtors have to make 5% and that their co-op has to be 2.5 or 3 or whatever. There's no prescription for it.
No, and we talked about this.
It's kind of like it's an industry thing where, the good brokers are getting 5%, and then the bad brokers, because there are bad brokers, like there are bad developers, I'm sure, right? Are I'm not trying to attack your
oh, please,
your profession. I'm not.
You're able to do that. You're not licensed. Go ahead.
But I mean, so you got the good brokers that say, well, I know I can sell this, so I'm worth 5%.
Right.
And rightfully so. If they can do their job and they do it well, they're owed that money because they do it well. But then you get the really bad ones that say, well, if the Matthew Ablakan's making 5%, then I want 5% too. And there's more bad ones than there are good ones, I feel.
Yes.
So that really, really makes it difficult for buyers to get genuine advice.
Well, we were just talking about this on another episode with Amir, and a lot of the Band-Aid solutions that certain provinces are putting together, like in BC, like banning blind bidding and a cooling off period for resale, because they feel that people in multiple offers are experiencing FOMO, fear of missing out. So that's why they're bidding what they're bidding. And it's like, look, I'm all for more transparency and better regulation. But from my experience, the issue lies with realtors that aren't doing their job properly. And I'll give you an example. If we just did a deal, I was speaking about it, $2 million house for a client. Actually, no, the deal didn't go through. We didn't end up winning it. The realtor had a listing presentation or an offer presentation date, and they said our seller's willing to accept a preemptive offer. So it's like a bully offer before the presentation date. So we submit the offer before the presentation date. He doesn't notify anybody. This is a broker of record, owns the company. Doesn't notify anybody of the fact that there's an offer. So right now, the regulation in Ontario, real estate brokers have to notify every party that's shown the property that there's an offer. Whether you like it or not, that's what it is. And he doesn't notify anybody, rejects the offer, encourages me to come back during the presentation date. We present the offer on the presentation date, and I just get a phone call later saying, hey, we decided to work with another offer. And there was no transparency. There was no checks and balances. We don't know what this broker of record was doing to make this deal happen. I am all for reform in my industry. I'm all for that. And my belief is if you get rid of the bad apples, you will reduce the amount of problems you have now in our industry. That's my belief.
Well, I think TREB tried that, or is it ORIA?
Rico.
Sorry, you know your associations better than I do. When they changed the regulations for getting licensed, required people to actually go to school as opposed to doing an online course that they can take 6 months to do. I think that that's a good start, because if you can just get your real estate license online on your spare time at night, I'm all for that kind of education, but that means anybody can do it. Whereas if you're going to go to school, I think that you're going to be serious about it, because you have to physically go and attend a class. You have to physically go and be in school for a number of months or years in order to get your license. And then I think that will produce better brokers.
You hope so.
Yeah, you do.
And I think that from the emails and the correspondence that I get, especially as a broker of record, from Rico, from Treb. We don't get anything from Oria now, but I think from the actual correspondence that I get, there's a lot of helpful tools, courses. I go to them, development courses and all that, to just network and also improve my skills and events and things like that. But the reality is a lot of it doesn't exist. A lot of it doesn't exist in the practical real world. You're getting, I saw an agent on one of our Facebook groups list an assignment property, detached home, corner lot, 3,000 square feet in Bolton, 1.5 million. I'm like, that doesn't exist in Bolton. Let me reach out to this guy. Reach out to him, call him. I said, have you ever done an assignment before? No, this is my first time. Okay, great. Are you able to provide me with the agreement of purchase and sale, the original agreement? They have to. It forms part of every assignment. It's a Schedule C. He refused to give it to me. And then at the end, he very boldly told me, I don't want to work with you. I don't want to work with you on this. I don't even know
why? Because you were asking too much information?
Yeah.
How are you supposed to inform your client? I mean, ultimately, it doesn't matter what the original purchaser bought the unit for or the house for. That's irrelevant. Whatever they want to sell it for is their business. As an assignee, you're going to either accept the terms and conditions of the deal at the price that the assignor is asking for, or you're not.
But the point I'm trying to make is that it's such an old way of doing things that there are holes in the way that things can be done. Like this guy right now, we were having a conversation on the phone. How can if I wanted to report him, how do I report him? I go make the report, I make the claim, they follow up, Rico follows up with him. There's no proof. There's no proof he ever said that to me. Where's the checks and balances here? Alberta has some great things that they do on the real estate side of things. And a lot of the realtors qualify to do mortgages as well. Like, it's such a big part. But you talk about mortgages to realtors here, not all of them, but most of them don't get involved. They don't want anything to do with it. They don't know if their client's going to be approved or not. Their client tells them, yeah, I went into the bank, I got a pre-approval. Have you been properly pre-approved? And going back to that conversation, like I read some of that article and I wanted to ask that buyer. I was trying to get them on the show. Were you in a position to even buy? Like, you were barely making deposit payments of 25 or 30,000, whatever it was for that person. Do they not realize that a deposit is not your down payment? It's not your closing costs. It's credited to you. It's your money, but you got to go qualify for a mortgage, see what you qualify for. Just because you're a first time home buyer doesn't mean you're automatically approved for 5% down. There's a lot of things that get involved. And I guarantee you, if you ask those people, did you work with a qualified realtor to walk you through? None of them did. I guarantee you none of them did.
Well, I actually feel bad for the assigner in this case, because a corner lot, 3,000 square foot in Bolton should not be priced at $1.5 million. I think he's doing a
disservice.
Huge disservice.
I don't think he has the listing. I think that's another game. That's why he doesn't have an agreement. I don't think he has anything. I think he's just trying to generate leads. That's the business that I'm in. That's what people do. That's what people do. It happens all the time. I had an agent tell me to my face a couple of weeks ago that she bribes other agents to get units in buildings, in pre-construction buildings. Told me to my face. Now you're looking at someone who fears God. We don't believe in bribes. We don't do those things. That's the industry that I'm in.
Oh, it's no different in the construction industry. There's a lot of brown bags that get brought to people's offices. I personally don't partake in any of those, but it happens all the time.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. I've been asked for it and I'll refuse. Okay, well, if you're gonna ask me for $1 in a brown bag, then I don't want to do business with you.
Yeah. Yeah, and unfortunately, that's the point we're both trying to make, is those are the industries we're in. And there are bad apples, and things can happen that go wrong, but at the end of the day, it's not everybody's out there to get one another. That's not the case. I know you're not like that. I'm not like that. So it's like, just gotta surround yourself with the right people. That person would have been way better off having bought at your project when we were advertising it. And one of those purchasers is on my Facebook. They've reached out to me before to get information. Never worked with us after that. The one that purchased that other building, that other project. Get what I'm saying? Like you have the people there. It's when something is so advantageous for other people, they don't care. Like they're going to do whatever they can to get it. But like you said, they're never going to come back and thank the builder for building this thing. And it's worth $200K more now. Or they're never going to come back even to the realtor. Thank you for showing us this opportunity, for spending hours networking, years you and I before we did ever a deal. 3-4 years before we did a deal, I think.
About 3 years, yeah.
Those are hours, breakfasts, lunches, dinners.
Nurturing a relationship.
Yeah, that's all value.
That's for you to be able to trust the guy that's going to give you units to sell, so that you know that the building gets built, and then you're able to pass on that trust to your purchaser. Say, look, I know the guy. I've spent time with him. I've broken bread with him. He's not going to run away with your money. He's not going to do anything that's going to hurt the deal.
Yeah. What do you want to leave our audience members with?
It's not my show. It's your show to leave the audience members with. What do I want to leave your audience members with? Real estate in this city is a pretty big deal. It has been for a long time. And there are risks, but there are rewards with risks. You're not always going to win every single one. It's like going to the casino, and I probably shouldn't be talking about this because I don't ever put $1 on a craps table. I never have. I don't think I ever will. But it's like going to a casino and being pissed off when you leave because you lost something. Or on the flip side, leaving and being super happy because you won something. Real estate is no different. It's a gamble. It's a risk for everybody involved. It's a risk for the developer, for the purchaser, for the brokers. And if you're informing yourself and you're working with the right people and you're working with developers with track records, brokers with track records, then you mitigate your risk. But ultimately, at the end, it's always a risk.
Yeah. But
with big risk comes big reward. So if the risk pays off, then, like you said, these purchasers are going to walk away with $200,000, $300,000 in appreciation in their property value by the time they close. And good for them.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, so does the developer. If the developer takes the big risks that we do and we come out at the end, hopefully we'll see that 10 to 15% profit.
It's always a pleasure speaking with you.
Pleasure's mine, man. Thanks.
And thanks for taking the time to come here.
Thank you.
There was a lot of value and definitely a different perspective, because that's why we wanted to get you on here. Share the perspective of what you guys go through on a day-to-day basis. And I think we got that. And follow oneurban.ca.
Thank you.
On Instagram. And check out what they're doing, because it's a forward-thinking group of builders. And until next time, folks, thanks for coming, Nick.
Yeah. Keep fit and have fun.